Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Hustle and Harmony. I think it's seven, but don't take my word for it. I'm starting to lose count, which is a good thing. But I think we're at lucky number seven.
I think so too.
Welcome, everyone. You're here with Ashley and Alyssa. So
Hi.
thanks for tuning back in. We're excited to have you here. We have what we believe to be another helpful episode in the works for you today and planned for you today. But before we get started, just to really quickly reacclimate you guys to the podcast if you're new here to Hustle and Harmony. We're really um, in search of, or, what we like to do is to deliver, good content for women that are looking to live a more purpose-driven life, right? So we live in this hustle culture society where we're constantly going, 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 but it really weighs on us. And we want to reach a point where we can live in more harmony and so feel like we can be successful, but also have calm and fun and joy in life. And so we're really focused on empowering women to get to that point and focused on different topics that help you kind of live your best life or show up as your best self. So hopefully you've been finding some value through the first couple of episodes. And today our theme is all about limiting beliefs, which
Yes.
might be new to some of you. Not sure how widely spread or known this topic is. I know Alyssa and I have talked about this for a long time,
Yeah.
and we definitely feel like it's an important topic, especially for women and I think high achieving women and those that want to show up in a particular way because it really holds them back from being
hmm
able to show up as their best self, as their authentic self. And so that's why we really want to break the barriers down around limiting beliefs so that you do feel empowered and inspired to show up as your best self and
Yes.
break through anything that might be holding you back. So before we dive in, I don't know, Alyssa, do you have any particular beliefs that maybe stick out to you as an example, just to get
Hmm.
started before we dive in a little bit deeper to
Yeah, I think one of my limiting beliefs has been like I don't know that maybe and this is gonna sound really dumb because I know that I am smart, but like that I'm not smart enough or like do you know what I mean? Like this like
absolutely.
it's just so it's weird because I know that I'm smart and there's evidence that
Mhm.
like I am smart. But I think that that held me back in certain areas or seasons of my life. I mean, not as much now, but I never really saw myself for who I really was. I let things that other people had said to me become these limiting beliefs in my own head. That kind of held me back. How about you? Do you have any?
Yeah, I think very similar to that. I definitely have felt that I'm not smart enough or something around my experience or I'm not enough to some degree,
Yeah, or
right? In a
like
certain situation.
qualified. That's
Right.
one
Yeah,
that I like at
definitely.
least
A big one,
struggle with.
at work that comes up is I work with a lot of men and I'm often the only woman in the room, or maybe one or two surrounded by men. And so at sometimes I question myself like, oh, can I speak up? Or, I think I held myself back
Right.
a little bit here
Yeah.
and there, before it's like, no,
Yeah.
I have something to offer. I have a valuable opinion, right? I bring something to the table. And so working through that was something that I definitely did over the last, over my career, because that was something common for me where I know I'm an intelligent person, but I
Yeah.
question myself at the same time,
Yeah.
and that comes across, I mean, that comes through in a lot of different ways, but that's just an example that popped up for sure.
Uh-huh.
So you're gonna, everyone will experience limiting beliefs in a lot of different forms. So
Yeah.
that's one example. I mean, I think we encounter them throughout the day, a million
hmm
different, a million different times, but before we get into maybe more examples, what are they? So, really, limiting beliefs are any, I would say, just deeply rooted thoughts or assumptions that we have or that we repeat to ourselves that hold us back from reaching our full potential, right? So, we had mentioned that earlier. And it's those little negative things that pop up in your mind as soon as you start to think about something that kind of like, I don't know, I feel like knock you down a little bit. It's like, oh, well, no,
hmm
you can't do that because of XYZ. You
Yep.
can't say that because of XYZ. So it's these very limiting assumptions that prevent us from stepping into something that we feel, I think, called to, right? Like, how
Yeah.
else would you describe them?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I love that I've heard in the past as limiting beliefs described as, because it's limiting beliefs, so as LBs, so like pounds, it's like baggage that like weighs us down, that we're carrying with us. And when we can like release and lift the limiting beliefs and replace them with actual truths, it's very freeing and it feels so much lighter. So I think having that like analogy is helpful in thinking about what a limiting belief actually does, because they do feel heavy and they do hold us back, those extra lbs, pounds. And so, yeah, I would just describe it. I also think of limiting beliefs because how you reframe a limiting belief is really similar to like positive affirmations. But the thing with limiting beliefs, I think, is that they're reoccurring. So it comes up often as a
Yeah,
reason
good
of
point.
why it's going to hold you back. It's not really something that like you think once. It's something that you often think about yourself when similar scenarios are presented. Like that's your immediate thought. And it's kind of
Yeah.
what you think of yourself in that situation immediately.
Yeah. I think another, simple way that you might be able to look at it is what do you often make excuses for?
Yeah.
Or, we could often call them excuses, right? Well, I
Yeah.
can't do that because I don't have any experience.
Right.
That's your excuse, but is that really a reason or is that a
Right.
limited belief? So
Yes.
what are the reasons that you explain to yourself or excuse yourself from a certain
Right.
situation or showing up in a certain way? I think is another way that you could probably easily identify one if you're new to this,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
hopefully that gives you a little bit of background. I mean, I think in terms of where they come from, there's a lot of different ways that they can pop up. Something could happen in your life. At some point, maybe someone said something to you and it just sparked that belief. It could be just this, societal impacts. Like I mentioned, for me, it just being surrounded by another gender, it just
Mhm.
kind of set something off, right? Where I felt a little bit imbalanced. So it made me question myself. It wasn't really like anyone said anything to me at any
Right.
given time, right? It was just something within me around that, right? I mean, what other ways can you think of in terms of where they might come from?
So, sometimes it's just your family dynamics. Like I'm the oldest. So I
Mm,
think being the oldest child in the family, there's certain dynamics there with that that can create specific limiting beliefs. It can be your relationships. I know some of my limiting beliefs come from past relationships and things that people said to me. It can come from your background. So like ethnicity wise for me,
mm,
there's limiting beliefs that I had growing up in a predominantly white area. It was really funny. This is going to sound bad. It's kind of funny. So this weekend we were in Baltimore, and so my girls are very light, like very fair skinned, like Ashley's. They're
hmm.
like light, and so
Yes.
sometimes they don't really look like my children, I think. But
Oh God.
Reagan was like, "Mom, why are there so many people in Baltimore that look like you? Like, meaning like have
Oh my
darker
gosh.
skin." And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I answer this question? And my husband, who, for those of you who don't know him, is also very fair skinned, kind of just looked at me in like I'm gonna defer this one to you. Like I'm gonna let you answer this. And
Uh,
so I was like, well, that's because we're in a city and there's so many different backgrounds and ethnicities. And she's like, but don't we live in a city at home? And I was like, well, we do, but it's a rural city. Like
oh my
trying to have this
gosh.
explanation. But
So funny,
yeah,
kids.
so there can be things that have come up, like for me, one big one growing up, and this is going to be really vulnerable, is that growing up in a predominantly white area, a limiting belief I had was that I wasn't going to be able to find a guy who wanted to be with me,
Wow.
which is like very deep.
Wow.
That was like true. Like I remember going through high school, like thinking I'm never going to have a boyfriend. No one's ever going to want me because I was the only person in my school
Oh my
besides like
gosh.
one guy and that looked
Mhm.
like me, and so it was a limiting belief. That wasn't a truth. It wasn't something that was known. It was just something that I kind of had this preconceived notion of in my head that I it really did hold me back until I got to college and I
Yeah.
was exposed to other ethnicities that I got to see like, oh, that really wasn't true what I thought. It was just because that's what I was surrounded by. So I just didn't think. it's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
it just kind of seeped in there, right? Because that
Yeah.
was, what you were
But can
around. I
come
think
from really like anywhere.
Yeah, I think definitely growing up, you probably do get a lot of them. I think just in general, right? Think of even, if you come from a like lower income family or a
Hmm.
single parent or something like
Yeah.
that, right? You grow up in a completely different way than
Yes.
someone with both parents who are, wealthy or something, right? So you enter the world with a set of limitations already. So it's something you really gotta work through, but it's
Yep.
possible, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely
Or there might
possible.
be things that like a teacher said to you or like someone in authority when you were a child that then you take that and that. So like one thing that people used to tell me is that I was loud. And I wasn't intentionally loud and I'm still loud, but I had hearing problems growing up. Like I had like 16 surgeries
Oh,
on my ears. So like legitimately when I talked, I couldn't hear myself. And so
right.
that was like a thing for me that was like a limiting belief in certain situations because someone
Yeah.
told me like, "Oh my gosh, you're so loud." And then I would hold myself back by trying to be really really quiet. Like I didn't want to say anything or I didn't want to because someone had
You
once
don't want to
told
be
me.
too loud.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
weird things like
Yeah,
that.
I realized when I was reflecting on this a little bit, one that came to my mind was I've always been told or, I don't know, say like recognized for, being a good student or being organized and like task focused and things like that. Very like logical, I would say in a way, is the probably like the forward facing quality. And so
Hmm.
I always just assigned that to myself where I didn't lean into any sort of creativity, right?
Yes.
Like I didn't think like, oh, I'm not a creative person.
I
I'm
say
not
that all the
that.
time.
And that's something that I've really leaned into more recently, like over the last couple of years, because I love exploring
Yeah.
that, like being creative and like different ways to do things, even in my job, which is very like logical in a sense, right? But that was a limiting belief for myself because it felt like, oh, well, that's what I am because
Yeah.
people notice that and that seems to be a good thing. And so
Yeah.
that's who I am. I'm not anything else besides that.
I totally get that. Totally get that. And we're
Yeah.
a lot alike in that way, so I feel like I understand that to a deeper
On another
level.
level, yeah.
Also one for me is like I've always been told from a very young age that I'm very responsible. Like I was always so responsible. Oh,
Mm.
Alyssa's so responsible. But then I also kind of took this like note of like, well, I'm so responsible, I mustn't be any fun. Like just because I'm responsible and I don't want to like break rules doesn't mean that I'm not fun. I'm actually a lot of fun. I just like to do it within the realm of not breaking any rules. Okay. Like
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That
but
is.
that was like a big limiting belief for me. Like, oh my gosh, people must think I'm so boring because I'm so responsible, you know?
Yeah. No, I can resonate with that one too. Or even just being like a risk taker
Yeah.
in certain areas because, well, I'm responsible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
Like,
I'm definitely a risk taker. Like, it's so
me
weird.
too. Me too, which
But
is
like now I
interesting.
know that. Didn't know
Yeah.
that then. I'd be like, oh, I can't
Right.
do that. Like that
Yeah.
was a big thing with the decision to go to college and like where I was going to go. I really wanted to go to St. Joe's in Philly. That was like my dream school, dream school.
Hmm.
And but I went to a really small high school and I'm from a really small area. So I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to the city so bad. And people would be like, you want to go to the city, you're not going to like the city. You're used to like that small feel. You're used to small class sizes. You're not going to want to do that. And it would then, so my choices were St. Joe's or Penn State. And then people were like, oh, main campus, you're going to go to main campus. There's going to be way too many people. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I should probably just go to Penn State School because I, it'll be like in my comfort zone. And I wish I wouldn't have listened because it
Hmm.
held me back. I wish I would have just like let myself go and explore and learn and
Yeah.
like one of my regrets that was based on like a limiting belief about what I
Great
could
example.
handle,
Yeah,
you know?
and letting what others say to you, you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's how I feel.
Right.
Yeah, okay, you take that on yourself
Yes.
and it does hold you back. So I think a lot of great examples how different they show up in our
Yes.
lives.
Very
But
differently.
the theme is it's always something that we listen to and then it holds us back from acting in a certain way that we wanted to, right? So our intuition was like trying to pull us in one way or like we're feeling tugged to do a certain
Yeah.
activity or explore somewhere, but we hold ourselves back because of what's
Mhm.
circulating in our head. So I think, yeah, easy way to recognize them is Listen to the excuses that come up for you. Oh, well, I can't do that because, right? XYZ. What are those just automatic thoughts that seem to come up? And typically they're negative, right? They're because they're something that's holding you back. So it's something like
Mhm.
you're not enough or you can't do that. You know what I mean? So I think those are easy ways to recognize them. Would you agree? Or are there any other like quick ways you like
Yeah, no, I think for
identify?
sure that I would agree with that. And so, for those of you who are listening, I would really just encourage you to reflect on like a time in your life when you felt stuck or even recently, and then think about, is there a belief that I have that might be underneath that, like of why I keep getting stuck there? It's almost like when you have a goal that you know you want really bad and you keep like almost getting there, but then you self-sabotage yourself back
Yes.
down to where you were. That's what limiting beliefs do a lot. They don't let you get over that like hump that once you're over the hump, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, big things are going to happen. It's going to be
Mhm.
amazing. But you got to get over the hump first. So think about like when have I been feeling stuck that there might
Yeah,
be.
and what is it that keeps coming up around that? So
Mhm.
yeah, because it's really powerful once you can identify them first. And then, of course, identifying them is one thing and being aware is always the first step. But then you actually have to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really do us any good if we're just identifying them.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, hear a little bit about, I know we talked a little bit about some limiting beliefs already, but maybe some bigger ones, maybe in adulthood that we've come up against that, we've worked through, like any that you feel like would be powerful or helpful to share from your perspective,
Hmm.
and maybe like how you um, went through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest ones as an adult, and it's not super specific, but it's that whole like, am I qualified for this? So I'll never forget, I got hired at my church to be like their small groups coordinator. And from the beginning, I felt so unqualified. Like I was like, they clearly have me wrong. Like I'm not the one. But I really wanted to do it. Like there was something inside of me that was like, oh my gosh, like I was feeling so called to do it, but so unqualified at the exact same time. And so my limiting belief was, now reflecting back,
Hmm.
was that I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the Bible. There's so many other people who are so much smarter than me when it comes to, all of the things that clearly I'm not qualified for this. And that limiting belief held me back in that position to the point where when my life was getting really crazy, it made that the easiest thing to drop off my list,
Mm.
which is really hard for me to ever say no to anything until I recently realized that I'm a people pleaser, so I'm better at that. But I will say that looking back, I didn't want to let it go. Like I didn't want to like have to step back from that position, but because I was so uncomfortable and felt so unqualified in my limiting beliefs, I stepped back from it. And I like hate thinking about like what did I miss out on or whatever. But things always happen for a reason. And I had just had Emmy and life was really crazy. It was COVID. There was a lot going on. So, it was an okay thing that it happened, but it was probably one of the times I felt the most unqualified in my life. So,
Yeah,
but
I can
I
hear that.
definitely recognized it like after the fact. So I didn't recognize it in the moment. So I don't know
Okay.
if your limiting belief story, like you recognized it, yours in the moment. I recognized mine like way after the fact. And I did verbalize at the time, like, I don't really know that I have what it takes for this. But I think that because I didn't really like talk it out
Hmm.
with anybody, I never like realized like, wow, this is really holding me back. So
And
that,
sometimes the way you even just said it, then we kind of make light of it, right?
yeah.
It's like, oh, you kind of joke about it, like, oh, I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but really, it's like deeper than that. Like, you
Yeah, it was
truly
so
don't
deep.
think, you don't really don't think you're
Yeah.
qualified for
It
this.
was like, no,
It's
I really feel like I'm gonna vomit every time I walk into church, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're the new small groups coordinator," and I was like, "But like, I don't know, am I like, this is really what I'm doing right now?"
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember when you were doing that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I feel like the unqualified one, that's really what comes, that's relates to my example too. And I feel like the limiting belief thing, they do hold us back to stay in our comfort zone.
Yes.
And that's why it's very easy to give in to them also because it's like, okay, yeah, I can believe that because I would feel really uncomfortable if that wasn't true and I
Right.
actually could show up in that way because that would totally shift how I see myself
Right.
and you know what I mean, my perception of myself. So yeah, mine is similar. So I think, recently through the podcast, through my own personal endeavor where I've been really
Yes.
been feeling pulled to help women, for lack of a better way to say it, right? To oversimplify it. For years, I felt like, well, how am I supposed to do that? Like, I'm just this regular woman who has a job, like, and who am I to be able to do
So
that? I'm not
funny.
qualified in any particular way, even though I felt so strongly deep about it, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so, yes, I recognized it was a belief that I had, but I also sat with it for a long time because I really didn't know how to answer it
Yeah.
or how to resolve it. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And in a way, so it's like I recognized it, but I did not take any action on it. It
Yeah.
was kind of just like, yep, I know that I probably that this is a belief that I am telling myself this and it's holding myself back, but I just wasn't really ready to hold myself accountable to move through it.
Yeah.
So more recently, right, where it was just like, you know what? No. And I don't know what exactly the trigger was. I think, divine timing always comes in to play. It was just, I had had enough letting it sit and
Hmm.
settle. It was just to the point where it was bubbling up so much that I just had to take action. And it was just like, you know what? It is what, like, obviously I need to do something about it. And so, even though I feel that way, a lot of times, even on the daily, while I'm pursuing this stuff and starting a podcast, we're going with it.
Yeah.
So, I think the biggest or one of the most easiest ways to help resolve a limiting belief is to just do something, like even the smallest step or action
Yeah.
in in the opposite direction to help
Hmm.
moving it away, you
Yeah.
know?
It's so funny that you say that that's a limiting belief for you because now that I know that it's a limiting belief for you, I can totally see it. Like it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like it makes sense of just like knowing you and like watching your journey,
Mhm.
getting to this point, starting your new thing. And what I want to say about that is sometimes our biggest limiting belief is the biggest thing other people see in us as a positive. Because you saying like, "Oh, I want to help women so bad and I didn't feel qualified or didn't, whatever." But what people say about you is like, "Oh my gosh, Ashley is such a leader. She's this, she's that." They describe you as all the things that you're thinking that you're not qualified for, right?
Uh,
So it's like crazy how even though you felt that way, it's not how people see you. Does that make
that's
sense?
interesting. I mean, I love that reflection back to me. Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
But it's
and I
probably
got a
true
little
of a
chills
lot of
hearing you say
things.
that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that is a good example though, or a reminder for people that when it comes to the limiting beliefs, it really is all in your own head,
Yes. 100%.
right? Because clearly other people are looking like, oh yeah, you could totally do that,
Right.
right? Like I could totally see that for you.
Yeah.
It's all in
Yeah, like
your
my pastor,
head.
he was like, "What are you talking about? You're perfect for this." I was like, "Okay, buddy, I don't know. I don't
So
know."
that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because it could be also having people reflect back, and I know we've heard about this as well at some point. What do people say they admire about you? Or what are the strengths that people always reflect back to you? Or, those kind of things,
Yeah, so that
and
brings
that's
up
why
a
I
good
said like with the
point.
organized, with this, with that,
Do you
I
get
pigeonholed
really
myself into certain ones.
Right. Do you get really uncomfortable though when people tell you that? Like that makes me very
Yes.
uncomfortable. Not like um I don't know how to explain it. Uncomfortable like don't tell 'em- don't talk about me positively.
I know what you mean. Yes, it's because we feel we want to be humble, I think, right? Because it's almost like I
Right.
don't want to be, oh, I'm
Like
so
I
great.
don't like that praise thing like
Yeah,
about me like that makes me very uncomfortable and not and I don't and I've had people say to me like, Alyssa, when someone compliments you, it's really rude to be like, no, that's not how I see myself. They're like,
right.
no, you need to receive it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but it's so uncomfortable to receive. But
Very.
that's a really good point. You have to think about like how do other, I mean, how some people view you doesn't matter because, you know, there's
That's
those
true.
people you got to just
Take it with a grain of salt.
yep, whatever, move them right along. But like the people who you really value their opinion, it is a great
Right.
idea when you are having these limiting beliefs about yourself to just be like, how do you see me? Like what, like how would you describe me? What parts of me do you admire or do you think are
Mhm.
my greatest strengths that stand out? Because you'll probably be extremely surprised at how that person who you trust and value their opinion sees you because it's probably not how you see yourself. But what I love about it is it can open up your mind to be like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I am that way. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
kind of gives you that confirmation that what you've been wanting to put out there is what people are receiving. And if you just dive a little bit deeper, you'll get over the hump. Like, you're gonna make it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You just got to get over the newness and uncomfortability. I remember being a brand new leader in my career and being like, why did I do this? Not, I don't know that I'm qualified to lead women. I don't know but then like it was like once I got through that really uncomfortable part of like learning how to
Mm.
lead, then I was like, oh, okay, I think I could do this, because it's just everything in life is a learning process as you go through it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And the limiting beliefs again keep us in that comfort zone. So they're keeping you there. And once you can break through, then you're
yep.
like, wow, I'm into this whole new version of myself.
Yes.
This leader of like this other version of myself that I was hoping for and
Yeah.
could have only hoped for. It's just working through it.
And there's
So
ways you can reframe
yes,
your limiting beliefs. And
absolutely.
so we have an acronym. It's long, but you're gonna love it.
I'm laughing because it's so long,
Um, but we
but
think that this will really help you guys.
yes,
So
it
it
is
is
helpful.
easy to remember, okay, because we're using the word reframe, which is what you're going to do, and that's what you need to do when it comes to limiting beliefs. So the R is stands for recognizing the belief.
Hmm.
So notice the thought and label it as a belief, not as a fact. So let's just use something, for example, just really quick, like a limiting belief we've talked about. So
I'm not smart enough.
yeah, I'm not smart enough. Like, is that a fact? No.
Right.
Typically, it's not a factual thought that you think. There's not,
Yeah. What evidence do you have
right.
that supports that?
Yes.
Do you
So
even have any?
that's the first thing that you want to do. And typically there's usually not evidence there to support this thought that you have. And so
Yes.
once you recognize, notice the thought, label it as a belief.
Oh, I jumped ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. You have to do the E, which is examine the evidence. So
Okay.
ask yourself what evidence supports this or contradicts this belief. So that's the E, examine
Hmm.
the evidence. And then F is feel the emotions. Allow yourself to feel what comes up. Don't bypass or validate those emotions because they are really, really important to feel your feelings. Like feel how you feel, sit in it a little bit because
Yeah,
that's
I
how
think,
you're going to work through it.
just to understand when you think of that belief where it comes up, how does it make you feel? Like I'm frustrated that I feel that way. I'm disappointed or,
Mhm.
disillusioned, whatever the case is, really understand like it's okay,
Yep.
right, that you're feeling that way. Give it its time. Don't let it overtake you, but
Yep.
understand that it's happening.
So then, so F is feel the emotions. Then the next R is reframe the thought. So you want to ask yourself, like, is there another way to see this? Or what would I say to a friend? So I think that's always good because
Hmm.
I always joke and say, like, oh, I catch myself sometimes in how I talk to myself. if I talk to other people that way, that would sound horrible. But I just
Yeah.
talk to
Think,
myself.
or your daughter is an easy one to use as an
Yes.
example. Like, how would my daughter comes to me saying this? How am I coming back to her?
Yep. How would I respond? So it's starting to begin that reframing process of taking the thought and turning it into um, a truth. So you're going to reframe the thought. Then A is affirm new possibilities. So this is where the positive affirmations come in because you're going to use positive affirmations that feel authentic. And so one of the things you could do is add the word yet. So, as an example, when I was talking about mine with like my job at the church, like feeling qualified, maybe I don't feel qualified for that yet, but I'm working on it. Like talking to yourself in that way is helpful. What do you think about that one, Ashley? Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did a little example with the acronym here, and like for mine it was, I don't have enough time to do what's important is that limiting belief. And so for me, when I thought about reframing it or affirming some new possibilities, it was okay, well, reframing. I just haven't tried the right tactics yet that
mhm,
set me up for success in that way, right? Like
right.
what I've tried in the past to manage all my priorities just hasn't worked. I just haven't found what works for me personally and my personality.
Yes.
And then in terms of like affirming new, it's I'm able to make time. One of my favorite things when I start to get stressed is I have plenty of time to get everything done, right? I have plenty of time to figure it out,
Yep.
and kind of make a plan for how I can accomplish something. So it's just how can you turn it on its head and look at it, the opposite way.
Yep. And then the M is make a plan for action. So Ashley already alluded to that earlier. Like you need to move in a forward direction. So identify one small step to challenge the belief in real
Mhm.
life. Is there anything you can think of that you've done? I know, like with this podcast, I mean, I felt super unqualified. And then we just kept rolling. We're like, all right,
Yeah.
I think having each other was helpful. And, to be like, okay, well, now we're going to do this step. Well, now we're going to do that step. I think if I were doing it alone, I probably would have hesitated at certain points
hmm
where you picked up the pace. And there might have been places where you would have hesitated where I picked up the pace.
Yeah,
It kind
definitely.
of helped us to get through it.
I think the big thing there is don't overwhelm yourself with like, oh my gosh, I need to totally change who I am overnight. It's okay, if this particular belief is coming up every time I'm in this meeting, I'm gonna do something different in that meeting.
Yep.
I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm gonna just show up in a different way that day. Just
Yep.
say I'm gonna test something out one time and see what happens. It doesn't have to be this earth-shattering change. Just I like to always use that thought of testing something out,
Yep.
just trying something out, seeing if I like it,
Absolutely.
and if not, I'll try something
Try
else next.
something new.
Yep.
And then the E is evaluate and reflect. So after acting, like after taking one little small step, reflect on what happened and adjust as needed. So I feel like a lot of times after you take that step, so here's one that I can think of that is good to use in this. So like for me, the unqualifiedness, like I used to hate going to networking events because I felt like I didn't belong in the room. Like, oh, I'm not qualified to be here. But then I would force myself to go and to go alone so that I had to like talk to people.
Right.
And so that was the actionable step was forcing myself to go to one networking event and then reflecting and evaluating afterwards. Well, when I went, how did I actually feel? Did I feel like, did I do it? Did I meet new people? Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's how you want to evaluate the progress. And then if you did it and you still felt kind of like, oh, I don't know, then is there another small step that you can take to help yourself continue to work to overcome that limiting belief?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we'd love to hear, in the comments, of course, any maybe beliefs that are popping up for you as you're listening to this that might be at the forefront and some ideas that you might have to take some action or reframe them.
Yes.
I think it'd be really helpful for other people to see that in the comments as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You
Because,
just really want to focus on choosing thoughts that are going to be empowering to you,
yeah.
not knocking yourself down, because limiting beliefs just kind of tend to knock you down or keep you down, where You want to be empowered in your thoughts. And if you're having a hard time coming up with empowering thoughts yourself, use Chat GPT or like
Absolutely.
ask a friend. Like I love to use Chat GPT for stuff like that. Like I kind of will describe myself a little bit or what I'm thinking and then let it pour out what I couldn't like formulate together for myself. So that's a great way to come up with some positive affirmations. If
Yeah.
you put in what you want to flip or reframe, it can kind of help you. And that's a great starting point for
Yeah,
yourself.
I love to use it as an idea, like the idea man sometimes,
Yep.
just to get the ball rolling and then you can pick and
Yep.
choose, you can see what works for you. And so really easy way that you can do that. So
Yeah.
hopefully you guys found that albeit long, but very meaningful acronym helpful, right? To reframe the limiting beliefs. So just to recap that, we have recognize the belief, examine the evidence of whether or not it's actually true. Let yourself feel the emotion of what comes up with that belief, but then start to reframe it. So that's the R, the second R. Then we have affirm new possibilities, make a plan for action, and then evaluate and then adjust, right? So it's all about just awareness, understanding, taking one small step or action in the opposite way, because once we start to take action, then we start to give ourselves new evidence of the contrary. Because all
Hmm.
it takes is a little bit like, okay, I survived, right?
Yep.
I did the thing. So that's the really important part there. So I think, coming out of today, we'd love to hear, like we already mentioned, some of your experiences or what you're going to focus on when it comes to limiting beliefs, how you might be reframing them if anyone feels willing to share. But I think, I just want to reiterate that these are really super common. We all come
We've
across
got
these
'em.
throughout our day. They come in a
Yeah.
lot of different forms, but really what they're doing is holding us back and we just aren't here for it anymore. We want to try to break through it.
Breaking the
So
mold.
let's show up in a different way, support each
Yeah.
other along the way. So what do you think, Alyssa? You want to close us out
Yeah. So
to add?
don't forget to share this with a friend who you think may love to hear it. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you head over to our Instagram, like and share that. And so smash the like button, share away, as our kids
Yes.
say. And we can't wait to see you back for episode 8. We're working on some fun things coming up for summer that you're going to
Yes.
love that are like summer topics. So get excited about that. We will see you guys next time.